I work at the Seattle Bike Show with Willie Weir. You probably know him from some of his books, his radio show.
Probably knocked on your door sometime, somewhere.
Yeah, looking for a place to sleep. So Willie is talking this afternoon about frugal bicycling. But right now I'm kind of curious about his maybe his best remembered bicycling experience.
You know, people ask me a lot of times where my favorite place was to travel, and that's so hard because you can think about, well, scenically, you can think about culturally, you can think about food, but there is one place that I've traveled that I think that I have to return to, and that's probably India. In 5 months of bicycling around India, I scratched the surface of that country, and for me, travel is all about extremes, and it's all about meeting different people and different cultures and food, and India has that like no other place on the planet. I mean, where else in the world can you pedal for 3 days and one day be with people, and 3 days later speak a different language, worship a different god, and have a completely different cultural outlook, and that happens. And it's a maddening place as well. I've always said that India is the most beautiful place I've ever traveled, and it's also the ugliest place I've ever traveled. It's the loudest place I've ever traveled, and it's the most serene place I've ever traveled. It's the most spiritual place I've ever traveled, it's the most amoral place I've ever traveled. It's the extremes of everything, and I hated it, and I loved it. And I think that a lot of times journeys are like that, because if you just love a place, it probably means you haven't dug further enough, or you probably haven't had quite the adventure, because there are always the ups and downs, and so it's probably a place I'll have to return.
So you go to a lot of exotic places. A lot of us can't do that. If you had a week from where we are at this right now in Seattle, if you had a week to get on your bike and go someplace, where would you go?
Well, I'm not a real destination-oriented person as far as that's concerned, but one of the recent trips that Kat and I did, and again, taking that idea of trying to arrive someplace and allowing the bicycle to let us explore. And I recently wrote a column about it, or a feature about it in Major Cyclist magazine, and so Kat and I spent a week-long, fully loaded bicycle trip all within the city limits of Portland. So that was stove, sleeping bag. I mean, we approached that trip in Portland just like we would India or Africa or whatever. And we really didn't know what was going to happen. I guess that's part of it. You know, we told ourselves, okay, no contacting people ahead of time, because I know some people in Portland.
Oh, sure.
And just let's let it go. And a lot of people will say, you know, cities, they're not as friendly. You know, you're fine when you're out in the small town America or a small village in the world, but when you get to the cities, they become very impersonal. Mm-hmm. Well, Kat and I spent one night in a organized campsite while we were there, and every other night we were invited either into somebody's home or allowed to pitch our tent in their backyard, or one place, a very beautiful garden. So our entire budget for that trip for lodging was $12. You know, most people say that, hey, you're heading to a city, they're really expensive. It's astounding, you know, and part of that was because we had bicycles with gear. Mm-hmm. You know, because if we were just on bicycles, we'd be one of the 10,000s of people pedaling around Portland. That gear set us apart. It made people ask questions. It made people approach us and say, where are you going? What are you doing? And in those conversations, we found people that later became friends, which is what every other travel has been everywhere else around the world. It's just micro. So literally, anybody could do that. It's just being the willingness of, number one, getting on a bicycle, willing to be vulnerable in that sense. Because that is, a bicycle, you're out in the elements, and you're exposed. Some people don't like that. I adore it.
Okay, good. Well, thanks very much.
My pleasure.
And maybe we'll see if you do a bicycle tour around Seattle.
Okay.
Knock on my door.
Yeah, okay. All right.
All right, thank you.